The condition is really crazy condition.
I mean, that shouldn't give away the whole secret to professional windsurfing.
Maciek giving Antoine elbow a run for his body. Here we go. Woo! What a finish!
The guy is kind of talking bullshit.
The team's just got to work a little harder. Welcome to the Windsurfing Podcast, back again for episode 10. And this week we have an iconic number 10. Literally. He was the first man to break 50 knots, and he did it on what can only be described as a tiny little stream in the middle of the desert. He talks about when he beat his idol, Robby Naish, and then spent the next decade trying to beat his nemesis, Bjorn Dunkerbecks. Yes, always the bridesmaid, never the bride, but a super nice guy, a legend of the sport. He's been seen driving around Ferraris to the beach with some windsurfing equipment just racked in. It is, of course, Anders Bringdal.
So Anders, thanks for coming on. Eventually, our schedules are not the most compatible, I think, but we managed to do it eventually, and I'm really stoked because every time somebody mentioned anyone they want to hear, like your name would pop up a million times, you know. So
no pressure, much but not enough.
No pressure, you know.
No worries.
Hopefully we can live up to the hype. I have no idea where to start with you. So let's start at the beginning. Let's start in Sweden.
We can even start before that. We can say congratulations from your latest win. I've been watching on a distance. It looks awesome. Well done, Maciek.
You told me you didn't follow much. And
I did. You know, sometimes I do more or less, but it's always good to log on to the old pwaworldtour.com, you know, so it's cool.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. You know, it's a little one, but it's a start.
Still counts. Nobody will know in a bunch of years. Don't worry.
Yeah. Like after, you know, in 5 years' time, it will be a World Cup, and in 10 years' time, it'll be a Grand Slam. You know.
There you go. They look like windy though. Yeah, good one.
It was good. It was really good.
Excellent.
So yeah, back to you.
Yeah.
I want to start at the beginning because Sweden is probably not a place right now that you'd associate with windsurfing all that much. But back in the day, you know, I think there was this crazy stat that like in the mid 80s, every second household in Europe owned a windsurfer. So where in that scale from me not thinking of Sweden as a windsurf paradise and, you know, every second European household having a windsurfer, where did you what did you get when you first started windsurfing?
I think if you go back to those days, I mean, I always tell people, ask me, you know, wow, how come, you know, you end up spending a lot of time in Hawaii riding big waves. You're coming from this small inland lake of Mälaren inside Stockholm, you know, how come you learn windsurfing over there? What people don't understand is if you want to become a really good windsurfer, you know, Sweden is one of the best places in the world to learn how to windsurf. You know, the water is super cold. You fall once, not twice. It's good, you know. In between that part, it happened to be that, you know, myself, I started as a kid. I always loved boats and all these sort of things, and I was into skiing. And then eventually my ski coach Gunnar Lodin was the one who actually started me. You know, he got into windsurfing a little bit through some other friends. We started that when I was 12 years old, and back then the sport in Sweden was huge. It was absolutely massive. It was just one of those things where you choose as a kid, you go into dinghy racing, or you do something much more extreme, which was grab this board that's almost 4 meters long that you could barely carry with this massive sail they couldn't lift out of the water. And that was the extreme sport, right? So yeah, it was extremely heavy at the time.
Yeah.
But I got into that, and got a knack of it pretty good, and went into that, and the sport was big in those days in Sweden for sure. There's a lot of practicants and a lot of competitions every weekend, so it was cool.
Yeah. What did you think it was? I mean, if you think about it, it sounds a little silly, right? Like windsurfer and Division 2 and the sport being absolutely massive. Even though if you jump on it now, I'm not sure if you're gonna have so much fun. So was there just nothing else? Or like you say, it was
Well,
just extreme sailing?
Well, like I said, if I think in Sweden we have to take into account is that we don't, especially for the greater public who sail after work. There's not every day you have wind for the materials we have today, which is a little bit the downfall of the sport in general. That we took it so radical into small boards that you kind of the PBA or what we started back in the day. When I jumped in, the course racing wind minimum was about 25 knots. This biggest racing rig we had was 6'4". It was just blowing. There was a different story. But in Sweden, we raced in between no wind to 15 knots pretty much. And it's all about gliding, and it's more about reading the wind around the corners of islands and so forth. So it's a different sport than what you guys are doing right now in that regard, And I do still get a lot of pleasure out of sailing gliding boards, which is not planing boards. They're more tactical and stuff. Now, of course, when I got into it, it was a lot of Division 2, which is round bottom boards. 3 meters 90 became Olympic boards down the road. These boards,
Fucking difficult to say, I might add.
well, yeah, I mean, the funny part with it is that I was very good at them. And I used to run on the rail with a dagger board half in on the board, pushing the board into the surfs on the reaches and so forth, because you weren't allowed to pump, right? But you can run on the board to pivot it. And became quite good at it and won a bunch of stuff with it and so forth. And then as I got into the PWA down the road, I spent 2 years on the professional tour. Ended up in New Caledonia. I met up with Frank David, who just won the Olympic Games on the Lechner at the time. And he goes, "Anders, you should take a ride. Let's go for it. We go for a sail." And upwind, I smoked it, but downwind, I didn't even make 20 meters. I kept crashing and burning the whole time. So it's one of those acquired learning curves, And then once you stop, well, you lose it. Then you have to get back into it. I think the sport of Division 2 right now is seeing a small revival, with guys like Jonas Davidsson is coming back on it. And it's, like I said, it's a charm. Everything has different, hammering down the reach on the slalom board. That's great. That's fun. That's what we love now. But it's for sure these gliding boards where you can go through no wind holes. There's not violent sailing. It's a different sailing, so it's cool.
Yeah, definitely. So you mentioned you won a bunch of stuff very, very modestly. I mean, if my research is correct, like 3 European or 4 European titles and a world title in Division 2. And I guess that chapter was kind of wrapped, like, right? And then Let's Go Pro and mid-80s.
Well, yeah, in those days, I mean, for me, I went through, it was my big year in Division 2 was really 1984. I didn't lose a race. I won everything from junior Swedish championships, Scandinavians to Europeans to world champions to everything, right? So I went very strong in that year, became the best skipper IYU, which was kind of cool because we were racing against Dennis Conner from the America's Cup boys and so forth. They all ranked it back in those days, so it was kind of funny. But for me, I needed that, including the amateur world championship on production fun boards at the time in Lake Garda. That was 85, which I won as well. So with all that as baggage, I had the right to actually get a slot into the professional tour, because it's not like today where you can register and join. It was a lot tougher to get in because it was a closed circuit from the manufacturer. So either you had a big sponsorship and the guy said, "Please come and join us," and if you didn't get your ticket to ride, so to speak, you didn't get in. So it was a bit tricky to get onto the pro tour at the time. And I got my ticket to ride.
Yeah, but I think being multiple European champion, amateur world champion, Division 2 world champion, that kind of gives you that slot. And you join in the mid 80s when the sport is really just on a huge ascent. What kind of tour do you get into? Paint us a little picture.
Well, basically, I got into, coming from my background, what I did, then I, 19 years old, big round eyes, walked into my first World Cup of silt. It was 85, and sponsored at the time by Tiga Neil Pride. And I rock up, there is always 100,000 people walking around watching the event over there, right? So there's a massive show like that. Tiga rocks up with the Tiga truck, which is an 18-wheeler. And Ug de Turkheim, my shaper from Tiga, says, Anders, opens the back and goes, there are your boards. They're all brand new race boards, slalom boards, wave boards, the whole 9 yards. I've never seen them before. I go, well, cool, so welcome to the World Cup. It was one of those things. And then I got into it. For me, obviously, my strength in it was racing. So I managed to get into that pretty well. I had the first race I took off. Unfortunately, I buckled my race board because I pushed the dagger board a little bit hard that these guys haven't done before. So I put the dagger board into the side of the board and had to kind of squeak myself around the course in that way. So I was third in the first race. And then the board was broken full of water. And then Onatelje, my teammate, Holland, Dutch guy, super fast actually, downwind, says, well, Anders, you know what, we have no more boards, but I got my old board from last year, prototype we used for the production board. Nobody can ride it, but have a ride, why not? And I pull out the board. It's the prototype of the board I just won the production world on, right? So this board wasn't an issue to handle upwind. And then it's, as he says, rightly so, was fast off the wind, right? So I came around the top buoy right behind Robby Naish. And as I sheared in, I went straight past him and I jabbed the first buoy. I couldn't even read his sail number. So I was going, this thing is flying, it's unbelievable. And that was good. And then ended up, I won the second heat. So then I was third and one coming as a rookie into the thing. It was called the third and final race because we didn't have more than 3 races. I was talking with my idol at the time, Thomas Persson, Swedish guy that coming from Sweden, you look at these pro guys, go, wow, they're super cool and super fast and so forth. And he was telling me, oh, you're doing really good. We're talking before the start, and we spoke too much. And so actually talking story a little bit too long before the start. So both we missed the start. Great, So I take off. We're in like a third line, pretty much taking off, and then beat myself around the course, and eventually caught up to, I think it was 7th or 8th or 9th, something like that. And it got me third overall for the racing. So that's how I started the World Cup in that regard.
Yeah, I think that's pretty unheard of for a rookie coming in and challenging that one guy that was dominating now for about, I don't know how many years already, at least 5 years, right? Robby was on it, winning title after title, course racing, slalom.
When you count, Robby's titles, there is no denying the fact that he created the sport. So for sure, as coming in as a rookie, I looked at Robby was, I even said it in school in Stockholm when one of my teachers, they said, okay, what are you going to do when you become big? What are you going to do after school and all this sort of stuff? And I said, well, I don't know, after school, I don't know about this, but I'm going to race Robby Naish. And everybody looked at me and go like, yeah, right. Sure, buddy, and it went off, and then you meet up with all these people. And of course, in the time, the windsurfing magazines was all we had. It wasn't internet and it wasn't this. So you create your own ideas around those people. And it was a big moment of my life. There's no doubt about it. That's cool.
Yeah. And a couple of years later, 20 years old, you actually get to beat the guy that probably 10 years earlier, you just wanted to even be on the same start line. So how did that feel? Was that at that point you realized you were good, or was it still pretty surreal?
I think everything was very surreal at those days because you also have to remember that it was very team focused. So we were a Tiga team. There was 5-6 guys in the team, and everyone was quite happy if one of the guys from the team won. It didn't really matter who it was. It was more of a family feeling like that, And also when it comes down to money, as Kirsten, you get your first sponsorship check, then you get your first check salary according to how many years you've been riding for the company. So it's not really like today where okay, you do a result, you make some money, you don't make a result, well, tough luck, because everybody in the team had a different situation where there were more product developers, there were more promotional event guys, there were whatever, so it was a little bit of a different, World Cup was different back in those days. Of course, you have to also remember that companies like Bic, Tiga, F2, they were selling the 300,000 boards per year. So for sure, the money was there, and there, you could do a lot of stuff with it. So the whole pressure was different. We flew around the first year with a team manager. We catered for media for lunchtime in a booth. It was a complete different setup than what it is today. So I was very lucky to live through it. It was fantastic.
Yeah. So you win another title in '88, and then this kind of shy, quiet guy from the Canaries kind of shows up. Pretty fit guy, pretty. What was your first impression of Donkey?
Well, when Bjorn first showed up, he wasn't, well, he may have been fit, but he was very skinny. He was even skinnier than me, and there was whistling behind me when the wind was blowing, so we were both very skinny kids. And Bjorn showed up, and he was going straight and away doing pirouettes, and it was amazing. But then, very, very quickly, he became, I don't know if it was fifth the first year he came in, but we definitely see his skills in high wind, even though he was a small kid in that regard, And then it took about a year, and he came back, and he would have exploded. I don't know what he did that winter, but he grew a lot. And he came back more the Donkey of today. There was a lot more stronger and bigger and so forth, So he caught up very quickly, and then he did what what the old song Buffalo Girls says: go around the outside, right? He went from behind and stepped past both myself and Robby, and that's that. And then from there it was very kind of tricky to get him down from his throne. That a lot of people tried and failed. It was hard.
For sure. You've been quoted, I don't know if that's an official quote or an unofficial quote, but you've been quoted that Bjorn kind of destroyed the sport by, how professional and how dedicated and how 24/7 he was. For you guys, it was a lot of fun. And then he comes in with an athlete type mentality, and then you got to step up. What else you going to do, right?
Well, it wasn't even just Bjorn. It was the terrible Phil McGain. He was horrible as well, with his little black book marking down the downhole tensions and what batten, what fin goes with what. That was terrible. You show up when you see the board the first time, and then you go and have fun with it, and that's that. It's a different mentality, as you put it. But like all sports, when they turn really professional, you go down this road, then, you always have to find when we started, we were going good because of talent, because of the sensation you have of the glide and how you use the stuff and how you can look at yourself, how you can how do we call that? You can see what you're doing yourself and try to improve yourself. There's no coach who's going to tell you, sheet in a bit more or push that, put that fin in supposed to this and go and train. That was like up to us to handle ourselves. And there's no doubt that Bjorn showed up, and he was a lot more rigorous in the training. And it paid off quite well for him, for sure.
How was your relationship with him, and how did it evolve over the years?
Well, yeah, I guess like all, when you've been pitted against somebody, it's all a bit of a love and hate, but I think you can clearly say that we all lived through the same world, and unfortunately for me at the time, Bjorn was the one that kept up coming out on top, and it was to the ridiculous. We're sitting down, and you have we're 10 slalom eliminations behind us. He won 5, I won 5, and the last day, then I'm leading by the last buoy, and then for some reason I fall, and voila, that's so it goes to Bjorn shit again. But it's a repetitive thing, and I think one of my other heroes I've had in my life, which is a skiing hero, Ingmar Stenmark, won of 86 World Cups on skiing, very good skier and so forth. He was quoted saying that somebody talk about luck, and he said, well, luck is funny, but I don't know much about luck. But what I know is the more I train, the more luck I have. And I think that's a little bit sums up also Bjorn in that regard, that in between the eye of the tiger, because truth comes down to it. When we're sitting on 5 winds each, I was quite happy it was no more wind the next day, where I think Bjorn kind of put the knife in his mouth and wanted to go out for a kill, you know. So I think it's an attitude, mix it, you know, and then that's just how it goes through, you know. Life rolls on like that. But I wasn't hungry enough for the last few meters, if you put it that way.
Yeah, I mean, this is what I wanted to ask you, because he wins 1, he wins 2, whatever, and you kind of feel I'm in the game. It's kind of temporary. But at what point did it start feeling sort of inevitable? Did it ever feel that way? Because you guys been ahead of the pack for at least 10 years, right? Just you and him, trading bullets, trading wins, event wins, whatever.
Well, it was different, you know, because at one stage it was funny. Once he was off the wind, I was a bit quicker. Once it was tight, and he was quicker. Which, if you talk to Richard Page, he will tell you it was a bit complicated to set the final race, the buoys, because they say you put in one way, goes on, it goes the other one goes Bjorn. So it was a bit complicated for the boys to handle. But it also comes down to, you know, just the way it goes sometimes. And then you know, then you're always living on a hope. You know, you develop material to fit yourself. In those days, we had prototypes, so that means that you know, Bjorn would probably power up his back foot a little bit more than what I did. I would get my boards a little bit more skinnier off the back foot, so I go better off the wind. You know, there was so much development going on in those years that you tune in the material. I always tune my equipment to be a little bit easier to sell, and I think Bjorn's was maybe a little bit more muscly to use. You know, I think the result speaks for itself. You know.
Yeah, you dodged that question a little bit about the personal relationship. I kind of, you know, Jimmy Diaz gave me a good perspective about it, that Bjorn, he wasn't there to make friends, really, you know, like he was there to fucking win, and that's it. And you, as I take it, you were part of the boys, you know, hanging out, having fun around the world. And was he kind of on that little bit on the side, maybe, you know, and kind of pissing everybody off with how good he was, or how was that dynamic?
Now, I wouldn't say that, but I think, you know, as well, now being a racer, that one thing that's quite funny with the World Tour is that you kind of know it takes a man today to say, you know what, I'm going to start just below Antoine Albo, because I'm going to take him out right away at the start. You know, that most people are going to go, you know what, maybe I give that one a breather, and I cut out and I leave a little bit of space, you know, so he won't screw me up too bad, you know, and you put your position, because everybody kind of knows in their head, this guy's going to take me or I'm going to take him, you know. And it's one of those things, it's repetitive. You have to remember that one of the years, PBA, I think we had 21 races in 1 year, 21 competitions in a year, in a season.
Yeah.
So it was very repetitive in that regard, you know, take your start right and so forth. There's been, you know, for sure, Bjorn came in with a different attitude, but add attitude, you say what you want. He was just faster. So then you try to go around and you try to find solutions to that. And sometimes you did, sometimes you didn't, you know, so it's a little bit complicated. I didn't come in with the same, I would say, kill it attitude, you know, that because I think Bjorn, when he really got going, he was hard to stop. In the beginning was okay, but he was, when he started, he was very good in high wind, but in light wind, he wasn't really doing it. So then it was favoring myself in that regard. But then it was a few years, he was just untouchable. But that was in the same time we kind of got on our ears a few times, and it was quite funny because it helped me out in my career as well, because Bjorn would win with a kilometer, you know, and then there would be 5, 6, 8, 9, 10 guys between me and Bjorn. I finished like 11th because something didn't work. And Bjorn in the interview would go, well, you know, see, I beat Anders again. I say, cool. You know, at least talks about me. It was all right, you know. But we did have our scruffs, so that's no doubt about it, you know. But I think you can't avoid it. You know, we're growing up with both kids, and you have your ego mixed with everything else, and then, you know, whatever. We didn't have any fights on the beach, so that was all right, you know. Lucky for me, he was stronger. Shit.
Was it always after it gets to a certain point where it just feels inevitable, you come to the event and you're like, fuck, again, again the guy's faster? Is it, to what extent are you willing to push? To what extent, to where do you want to go to actually win? Is it always clean? Does it come through your head? And here we're going to probably touch on Phil again and the team, and how there was some rumor about team racing there and whatever, just to take this one guy, take down this one guy who's been dominating, let's say, for 10 years at this point. How far would you take it?
Well, for me, I wasn't in there because I'm Swedish, so it's not in our DNA, put it that way. And I think that if you win, if you're going to have any value to your win, you have to do it clean. Otherwise, if you win by a short, cheap shot at somebody, then it's not worth it anymore, So that's a little bit my personal position on these sort of things. But I think that more the way I see it is that, sure, somebody could smoke past you. Maybe the way you figure out then is to start messing with them at the start, because you can accelerate faster. That will give you a buffer. And back in those days, we always had the racing rules. You had to have fully overtake to windward. If you get your nose in just past his tail, you can actually jibe without him pulling on top of you, right? So it was a bit of a war like that to see it in a few videos from the old days. I was on spinning around for Hookkeeper, where I actually held it almost to the end, and then a wave smacked me over. But that was also because of the racing rules. That if you follow now, you see there was a video of Antoine and Matteo in Forteventura last year, and it was amazing. And you can see that with the no rules, you're not safe in the leading position. In our world, when you had these rules, you were quite safe because the guy had to fully overtake you to windward. You can luff him up, you can do what you want. You can kind of call them. So somebody's going to pass you the windward, have to really blow your doors in, otherwise it wouldn't happen, right? So that was the difference as well. So you going slower, you had options. You can still play with somebody a little bit, but after that many jibes down the wind, eventually the inevitable happens, unfortunately.
Yeah. And like, I'm touching on that because me in that position, I would go crazy. And with all the gear development, and you feel almost like the guy, okay, first he wins with talent, like you say, but then the amount of support and the amount of gear and the advantage that he can get just by having the access to pretty much like countless amount of boards, right? Countless amount of sail designer on the beach, shaper on the beach, reshape whenever you want, fins, whatever. Paint us a little picture about that gear war and maybe how lopsided it was, if it was at all.
Well, I think it's it wasn't really lopsided. Sure, Bjorn went through a lot of boards and a lot of things because he tested a lot and worked a lot in that regard. But it's a little bit like you look at America's Cup today. If you look at the America's Cup, you have the same situation where kind of enough money to do what you want to do, and you have teams created around that. Who wins? Is it the guy who puts the most money down, or is it the best guy who wins? And that's a little bit the situation we had as well, because you can do, I don't know how many boards Bjorn used to go through in a year, 50 to 100 boards, something like that, just to, Peter Tommy used to shape like nuts for him, right? But the point is not that. The point is somebody's going to have to tell the shaper, I want to board like this. And then you have to bring that forward. There's a reason why the 150 of the tail is at, 8 millimeters as opposed to 12 or something like that, and that matches with the way the board goes through the chop, and then that matches suddenly with how stiff your mast is, how much where you cut your twist in on your sail, and so forth. So it's not just quantity won't win over quality. So the reality is simple. If you just make one board and one sail and happens to be the fastest, we're going to smoke everybody and done deal, right? You haven't done any work really. You just have the best board. So it was the searching of path. So sometimes too many boards won't help you either. So You have plenty of times where a prototype, you show up with it and go far out. You really believed in this. And I think that was more what we see on the World Cup in those days. So some riders, they got the position of being head testers, and then they said, well, look, we're going to do it this board, and that's the best, and this sail, and this is the best, and so forth. And then you go racing and you're not winning. And the guys are saying, well, it's the best we did, and so forth, but they missed out to see what the other guys are doing. So at one stage, I know the sail manufacturers even used to swap sails around between them just as they got into production, just to test in that regard, help them from buying the kit from the other guys to make sure that theirs was as good or faster or whatever. So it's a lot of stuff like that going on for sure, but I can't say that there was a material advantage anywhere in between us. We all had what we wanted, so that's not a problem.
You're kind of taking it really modest, like the guy was just better, but it must have fucking pissed you off, like the label of, kind of always second, even though you had your titles from behind, from previously. But I mean, it's been a few years, that you've been closer, further, whatever. How was it year after year?
Well, it's tough, for sure. In that regard, it's tough to always have somebody there because, but like I said, you can sit down and get pissed off. That's the childish approach, right? Or you can look yourself in the mirror and you can say, you know what? There's absolutely no reason why this is like that. And that's exactly what it was. There's absolutely no reason why Bjorn was winning all the time. We had all the material, we had all the time, we had the money. There's no reason why he's not better like that, right? The only reason was that he was willing to train that much harder that myself, I stopped. I prefer to do different things in my life and then, hang out with friends and do different things. And then the result, you can't, it doesn't lie. So there's, then you can look at it from that point of view. But for sure, it's easier to look at it now than what it was at the time,
Yeah, I can see that. You're way at. Seems you're really at peace with everything because in hindsight, I mean, you achieved an incredible feat, and incredible, like an incredible CV, right, of windsurfing. But I must.
No, the years. There's no doubt when you look at the years 90 through 2000, those 10 years right in there was tough when Bjorn was really flying. Then for sure. Then if you're sitting there, like I said, it's frustrating when you go race after race and you're so close, but yet it doesn't go that way.
Yeah.
So, but like I said, you can't change it.
Yeah, but there was times where you would dominate as well. I mean, Thomas Persson, who you mentioned, he was later, once you went from Neil Pride to Simmer, he was actually your sail designer, right? Yeah. And then you guys came out with this cyber race thing with this sail, which apparently in light wind, it just absolutely dominated. I've seen this magazine kind of spread where in Dover, you basically won every single race in course racing. So, so you had your moments of genius with these.
For sure. I mean, the moments are there. There's no doubt about it, But I mean, we even went down to things that was people back in the days of slalom and Bozo. Then people would time me through the course and time Bjorn through the course because we're coming from the different side of the ladder to see who's going to win the final. You know what I mean? It's just ridiculous how that was. But in the mix of that, don't forget that there was Robby, and the Robby around the corners you wouldn't get, but as long as you put the course more than 200 meters in one leg, he got bored. He wanted to jibe. He's a wave rider. So it's a difference. And then you go in, you have Bernd Flessner, you have Patrice Belbioch that was on fire. Antoine came on later on in the season in the high wind. He was really strong. So there was Pete Volwater at the time. He was flying, rest in peace. And there's a lot of these guys, just like you have today. There is everyone have a little bit of coin to play. You make today. I can only assume one little mistake in the start with the wrong guy next to you, it punishes you big time, right?
Yeah.
So for us, we had a little bit more of a buffer maybe towards that. but it remains the same. You have Torkel Christiansen, that was a mammoth of a man that used to slap you big time if you made a mistake, you know. So it just depends on who was hot for the moment, knowing that with the product development we had, there was guys that showed up out of nowhere. There was Fabien Pendel from France that showed up with his So What sales one time, and he smoked us all, you know. There was like, see you later, guys. It was gone, you know. So there's a lot of these stories. There is Eric Thiem that, you know, was the first one to jump on the slalom board on course racing. We come around the top buoy in Tarifa. I'm heading down. Eric is waiting for me. I said, Eric, what are you doing? I don't know where to go. Where do I go? You go that way. Just go. You know, it's just, that's classic. So we had a lot of fun for sure.
Yeah, the gear was flying forward with the development. Would you be able to pinpoint certain things that you would say, okay, this was a breakthrough. Okay, 6 months later, this was a breakthrough. 18 months later, that was a breakthrough. How would you? Because for us, it looks all the same, you know, long, skinny pencil style boards and pretty tight sails, short harness lines, you know, a very different style. So
yeah, I think it's a breakthrough as that for sure. When we started developing all the material together as one, that was a big breakthrough. I mean, it was funny things because, you know, you simply didn't know, right? It took us, I don't know, a few years to figure out the rocker lines are more important than how many concaves you have on the bottom of the board, you know. So it's somebody rock up and say, wow, I have 3 concaves. Wow, cool. Well, I got 5. Holy shit, you're gonna smoke me. You know, I said, oh no, it's not like that. It works, you know. And then obviously to weight the stiffness of the masts, you know, bending of boom curves, you know, how you can make a sail go much faster in light wind with the right boom curve, all these sort of things, you know. There's you know, you just have to spend time and figure that out, and then come together. Then of course, being that you're number one in a team, that you have the choice to cherry pick a little bit of these sort of things. The guys coming in down the road, when the money started to trickle down, it was harder because they got more leftovers in that regard, you know. So for sure today, the fact you guys are racing production boards evens out the game. Even so, that today the top riders are going through how many production boards in a year, you know, before even stamping them in, you know. That's also, it comes down to the same thing, you know. So you have to get used to your material, and then you have to tune it as one. That means that for your weight, I'm sure you have a fin that wouldn't be the same as somebody that is 20 kilos heavier than you, and so forth, you know. So it's the same story, you know. It just depends on you fight with the arms you have, right?
yeah. And I think we have to say a big thank you to you guys and how it all kind of developed, because these days I catch myself looking at a sail and a board and I'm like, holy shit, you know, how did we get here? Like, you look at this mast, it's bent, you have vertical shaping, horizontal shaping on the sail is like so fucking complex, and it's insane. And then you jump on it and your harness lines are set like this far apart. The you know, the center of effort doesn't move. The board just trims there. You know, it's like, it's crazy. And it must have been, you know, even crazier back then because there was a new thing, you know. And yeah, must have been.
I think the biggest thing for us was the change of material. You know, in the beginning of the days, most of the boards were plastic, you know, and then they went into composites, and then they went into 100% carbon. Everything was carbon, and something was stiff as shit, and your teeth will fall out of your mouth.
Enjoy it in pose.
Exactly, that was tough stuff, you know. So it was all that part, you know, and then when you start to realize that you can lay up boards in different ways so they can assume a bit of the shock and so forth, that made you know, your life easier. But there's no doubt that when the sail design, when we figured out to put in horizontal shaping, you know, in the back of the sail and vertical next to the mast, that opens up to twist control that we didn't have in those days. So you can really tune the sail into how you want to sheet in and how much you want to move your body, you know. So there's all these sort of things that for sure came down to today. That's I'm sure the guys are, being out of it myself now for some time. I'm sure that today that, the guys actually designing the sails and boards today, they're working on a few millimeters here and there. They don't move so much because the masts are, okay, they're kind of there. You're working maybe on high modulus carbon nowadays. I wouldn't have a clue, but there's so much that the material has pushed forward already that now you're back into fine tuning until somebody will figure out something completely different. Then everybody's scratched themselves in the head again and go, wow, okay, what do we do now? There's a different angle, right?
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And I actually, the first time I saw you, I think was France last year. And I was like, holy shit, that's a big dude, like in, the movie Snatch, when they arrived to the gypsy to buy a caravan. And Brad Pitt, the gypsy, goes, hey, Mark, come look at the side of this fella. Something like this, I was like, okay, Anders is a big guy. And we've been brought up in this idea that you guys were freaking huge and massive and super strong and whatever, like yourself, Bjorn, all these guys you mentioned, all the Swedes, Christopher Rappel, all these guys,
Yep.
and but actually, when I did my research, you were like 87 kilos when you were racing, 88, 89. If I show up to an event now at 87 kilos, I don't even need to go to the start. I know I'm going to lose already. And then I start thinking about it and start watching all these old footage. And the gear, it actually looks way more like you're fiddling it. It looks actually less physical, more maybe you needed a little bit more skill. The board doesn't have all that much lift. I actually tried a board from 99 the other day, and it was like you actually needed to generate some lift, short harness lines, tight leeches, small sails. I think this idea that you guys were these fucking massive powerhouses and you needed all that physicality to run the gear is a bit wrong, actually. And how do you compare to today? Because today, power is not something you're lacking on the gear. I just did the 1 hour classic. I almost died after 20 minutes because, there was so much power on the gear. Like, can't hold it. I can hold it for 400 meters, one straight in the thing, and then I jibe, normally. So, with that perspective, how would you compare that gear of back then and that gear of now, and the fact that everybody thinks that you guys were 110 kilos and fucking just in the gym every single day after sailing?
Well, I think, when it comes down to the body weight and stuff like that, I started when I won my Division 2 titles and all that, I was 70 kilos, 193, 70 kilos. So, I was a skinny boy in that regard. Then I got into the World Cup and I started to pack on weight, but I went to the gym. I tried to get heavier because heavier and stronger was faster in those days, so you try to pack on weight. And I remember I used to, I went through 4,000 or 5,000 calories, protein shakes, lifting weights. I couldn't pack on any weights. And then eventually I started eating a bit of McDonald's, and then the weight comes on straight away. That was kind of interesting. But that was in the years, 25, 26 years old, like that, right? But like you said, my racing weight was an 85, 87 kilos, like that. And Bjorn at the time would have been super heavy, would have been 5 kilos heavier than me. It would have been 92, 93 kilos, something like that. It was only Finian that showed up and was bigger than us all. And played American football on the beach that slammed us all to the ground. That was pretty much it. And the big, heavy Torkel Christiansen would have been a 97, but there was no 110 kilo guys around, and the material was tuned for that as well, right? So I think that's a little bit what the difference comes also from the fins, the fact that you guys are on carbon fins that you can control a lot today. You can control the fact that the board don't fly out of control anymore and so forth. It makes it easier, in that regard, that you just put on more horsepower, so it's that's also for us. It was maybe more finesse to get the stuff going. Smaller boards, skinnier, smaller fins, tighter leech, more efficient, smaller rigs. I wouldn't say more efficient, that's the wrong word, but it, they were, for us, it wasn't necessarily faster to go in a big rig than the small rig. So that gives a little bit also the situation. We used to bag out the sails when, as opposed to switch up, you just bag out the sail and you have more power and you go faster with less drag. Now, once you start to pointing up tighter and your board don't lift anymore, you can go for a bigger 1 foot off. You start charging horsepower in the rig, and that's where you are today, right?
Exactly.
So it's a different story.
Exactly. Do you feel like, I don't know, if you watch or happen to watch a World Cup or go around, do you feel like every idiot can go fast now?
I wouldn't say so, but there is for sure. I think from the outside, you need to be quite a powerful boy to hold down the big material in a lot of wind. And then I think also right now, what would you can tell this to me better. If you have 20 to you have 19, gust 25, what rig are you on? If you have holes of 15.
Yeah, it depends. You probably need to be on a 7.8 at least. Maybe you're on your 8.4,
Exactly. And in those days, we would have been definitely not bigger than a 7.0, So that's a little bit the difference, I think. And then also the fact that we had a little bit more water line on the boards, maybe that helped. But that's now I'm just saying that like that. Material has changed the sport. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah. Okay, we covered all the nerd stuff. Let's switch into the nitty gritty.
Right.
The 80s, the late 80s, the early 90s. Money's flowing, media, parties, chicks, groupies, whatever, superstar type of lifestyle. Are these legends growing with time, or was it really like being in Hollywood?
Can I take the Fifth Amendment?
You can take them on the groupies. I know you're married,
No,
but the rest of
no.
the stuff you got to spill.
No, that's what I say to my wife as well. It's all about practice, right? I mean, you get a better windsurfer once you practice a lot, right? She don't understand me. She beats me up a lot for that comment, but okay, c'est la vie. No, it was fun times for sure, but money. Well, put it this way: Robby Naish in a dinner. There was myself, Bjorn, and Robby in a dinner in Germany in the mid '90s. And I said, guys, say what you want. You guys are sailing good. That's good. But know that I made all my money before you guys showed up. So the big money days was before the 86. So we both look at each other and go, shit. It was quite funny. But there's clear that when you look at the PWA in the early days of prize money, that was better. So for us, you can fully live off your prize money, which is today is a little bit harder to do, I believe.
Yeah.
So for sure that just made, so any other extra sponsor you had would just, go ka-ching on your bank account, so to speak, right? So that was big time. There was a lot of big events in those days, also thanks to cigarettes, for sure, that were allowed to advertise with Pall Mall in Holland, with Peter Stuyvesant Travel in France, and Japan Tobacco in Japan. So that created a bigger event in that regard, so all extreme sports flow on that wave. I would say surfing the same, everybody like that, so it was different days.
And it seems like what we touched on Bjorn was actually not the norm. It seems like it was more about the characters, about the stories, about the party, about the socializing, about probably things that we see now as around the sport. But to be honest, for commercial success, it seems like these things are as important pretty much as what's going on out there. If you look at Silt, I mean, that event, the having windsurfing there is probably just an excuse to have all the other stuff. And it seems like you guys at that time, you had it, kind of perfected all those things, the right balance between, socializing, promoting beers and ciggies and racing, so.
Well, one for myself, I never smoked, so I can't talk about that one. But it's clear that we had a very good life in that regard. You know, it was fun. We traveled with a bunch of friends, in effect, around the world like that. And you hook up on different beaches all around the world, and that was normal to us. You know, that makes sense. But you know, we had a lot of fun. There's no doubt about it.
What's the most rock and roll thing you've ever done in your life?
That's a tricky one, you know, but I must say that we had fun in Oahu one time with Robert. That was definitely fun. We had, I think, O'Neill, Marui O'Neill competition in Diamond Head, you know. Robby, that's obviously his world. He used to live over there at the time. Robert, you know, he was into cars at the time, so we went to rent cars. So we competed in the daytime. We partied like nuts in the nighttime, and we would rent cars. You know, so Robert had this 348 Ferrari that he was driving. I had a different Ferrari to begin with, and then I switched up to Lamborghini Diablo. Like that, it was, you know, hey, we were 25 years old. You know, life was fun. You know, so. That was cool. We mixed it up like that. Oahu is good for that type of Hollywood lifestyle. You can definitely do it. Mix that with the fact that we were traveling from south of France, partying in Paris, flying through New York, getting to Hawaii, bounce off to Tokyo, do the event in the south. You know, that was cool. We just mix up with a different situation in life, you know, with everybody. It was good fun.
Do you feel like it's missing today in the sport a little bit?
Nothing like that is missing, because it just creates a little bit of situation you're in. If you could do it today, you probably would, if it was there to be had, you know. And I think today the difference is that the sport has turned in more professional than what we had, because for sure, had it been like it is today, then you guys would have handled your time probably different than what we did. So it's very, very tricky to say that this is a different situation than it was then. You know, that for sure it's amazing to see that the sport of windsurfing went from such a massive sport to shrink to the level where it's at today. If you look at the level of sales worldwide, from the board brands to sail brands to even wetsuits and whatnot, you know, there was a very different number than what we had back in those days, and that creates something different as well. Media, most of the events was live televised, you know, so it's we became by definition stars because of that. And people now, it's not anymore. So now people remember us and they put us in the same pedestal a little bit than the riders of today. And I keep saying that, like, you try to race them of today, you know, go duke it out with Antoine and the boys in the slalom. It's like, okay, that'd be fun, but we won't last very long, you know. It's a very different life, you know, so things pushes forward, and that's what
I'm not saying like, you know, that we need to throw 10 grand at a strip club a night, you know. I'm saying like a little bit of character, a little bit of, you know, there you always hear stories of guys, musicians playing in front of 20 people and going like, "Oh, you guys at the back, make some noise," you know, like, you know, a little Brian Talma or a little whatever, you know. You don't seem to miss that a little bit.
Well, I don't know. I think, you know, you guys have some flavor, you know. I think it's just about how things goes forward, you know. Back in those days, for us, it was we obviously had people that was more media than racing, that was traveling around the world tour, and the result was less important, but there was more about the parties and so forth, you know. There is everyone have to find their own way how to walk through life, you know. You choose one, and then it's kind of hard to switch completely in between them, you know. Everybody finds their own road, you know, and then as long as you live your life happy, then that's good, you know.
Yeah.
I'm not going to say that today you are less cool than what we were back in those days, you know. I wouldn't have a clue, actually. I don't think it's true, you know. It's just how we go through it.
Yeah. So to prepare for this, I kind of phoned up a couple guys of the generation sort of below you, right? So the guys that are either still on tour or just finished, you know, like kind of, let's say, the, you know, not to make you feel old, but like, let's say the early 40-year-olds right now, you know? And one of the stories that I think shows those times was, you're going to verify if it's true. Andrea Cookie told me he got stuck with you and Bjorn somehow at a bar or at a party. And it was the day before the event. And you said, Andrea, come for a drink. And he's like, no, I want to race tomorrow, you know? He's like, who did you see drinking the most today? He's like, Bjorn. And who's winning? Bjorn. So why don't you do the math there? You know, and I think that kind of, I don't know if that's true actually. You know, maybe there's some Italian flavor to it added, but yeah, the younger generation, they definitely idolized you guys. And I've heard stories from, you know, Arnon saying like, you actually were a big push in his career because he went, I don't know, he went course racing with you and Jamie Lever in Maui, and you were like, holy shit, you know, like, who is this guy? You know, he's quick, you know. And then Finian telling me that he bought like a harness with, you know, your pro model, like a super low one, because he wanted to get better in light wind. And yeah, you know, Andrea Rosati told me like, you gave him the nickname of the Gigolino. So my question, I guess, was it just natural to you, or did you have a feeling like, okay, this sport gave a lot to me and I want to bring these young guys kind of, you know, forward and along for the ride, or whatever? Or was it just...
I always I always try to give as much as I can, you know, and I never saw it as anything different. You know, if I see somebody I can help them to go faster, I would, because it was a little bit my position with my sponsors as well, to bring people into the sport, to create the bigger sport. That's what I like to do. And when I saw guys like Arnon, that was obviously very, very good. That was a pleasure to sail with him, you know, and if I could actually push him forward, I would be stoked. That was great. You know, for me, that's a satisfaction as well, just like myself winning something. I see guys, kids that are coming through. If I can help them go faster, I would. Even to the point, I remember I was with Jesper, a Danish kid in Pengu Island one year doing a promotional event, and I said, why are you riding this, you know, small rig? Just put a bigger one. I go, you really think so? Yeah, do that. He did, and he smoked me, won the event. Shit, you know, so it's how it goes. Jesper, or it was really funny. But you know, you cannot, you know, being who we were and how we like to develop and how we, you know, because in the end of the day, we kind of knew the material quite well. So when I see somebody struggling, but they just don't have enough downhole, I can't live with myself if I don't tell them, look, why don't you downhole just a bit more? It would be better for you, you know? And I think that goes through a lot of what I've done in my life in that regard. You know, I like to share, so that makes me a happy boy. So I do it.
Yeah. And then we turn the clock to the 2000s, and you kind of slowly starting, you know, to step out of the sport. What was the reason? Did you just miss, I don't know, you didn't have electricity left to just keep, you know, grinding around the world, or you had, you know, some greener pastures and different, you know, just different things to take care of?
Actually, I stopped the PWA World Tour as slalom disappeared and racing disappeared and wave riding disappeared. It was only when I quit 2003 or something like that.
Yeah.
There was Supercross and Pozo, you know, and it was funny because it wasn't meant to be that I stopped like that, but I had a boat in Stockholm and I came back in with my boat. I docked it in the harbor, and it was late night, with 3 a.m, something like that. And we had to do, you know, a bit of water on the dock, and I slipped and fell. And I hit my leg on a metal bar. Not very bad, you know, but not a big deal. 3 weeks before the event in Pozo. And went to sleep in the night, and I woke up in the morning with a compartment syndrome. That means that my foot was filled with blood, and it was a balloon, and it hurt like hell. So I went to the doctor. I said, "Well, you need to fix this really quickly." And they said, "Well, okay, we can do this." When I got me a bunch of morphine and put your feet over your head and chill out for a while and see how it goes, And it kind of slowed down, but not really. And then just before taking off to Pozo, I said, "Look, how is this going to work?" And said, "It was simple. You just take this spray, cold spray, and you spray down your foot, and you bandage it. And if you do that, you probably won't feel pain for your first 5-6 minutes and stuff. And then if you heat this 8-9 minutes, the last 2-3 minutes you have to kind of handle." At the time I put my foot down, I would fall over, almost fainting. It hurt like hell, right? And I looked at my mom at the time, and I said, "You know what? I done Pozo for 17 years or something like that. I think that's okay. Yeah, I can step this one off." And then the next year, it didn't really rev up either. It was super. It was the freestyle into the slalom, and it was, they were searching at the time, PWA, to find if they can mediatize the sport more, using freestyle in between all this sort of stuff. And myself, there's a few things I've never done in my career, and one of them is a spock. And when you put in the slalom that you have to do a spock, well, I kind of go, you know what, that's okay. I've been there, done that. I don't want to go through this. I went through enough aspirin bottles to do my spocks, and it wasn't my thing. So then I left it there, and then from there it was I changed, I went into more production. I created my board brand, AB Plus, production out of China. I did a boat yard over there, and we eventually built the Chinese America's Cup boat for the Valencia tour. So I switched, and from there, then I was kind of gone, and I came back into do still some promotional event like Duffy Wind and stuff like that, which became harder and harder because being that I sailed very, very little every year, I came into these events beginning of crazily not sailing at all, and then have to handle a reach of 9 kilometers, with the arm inside the boom or the other way, and on the same time doing jackat to everybody else. And you pausing, it was a nightmare in that regard, but it was fun, And then I got into more speed sailing, because speed sailing then was fitting me a little bit better. I always thought when I started as a young kid, we had a Swedish speed sailing champion, and he was an old guy, he was fat. And, now I'm an old guy and I'm a fat, so it fits me perfect then to be a speed sailor, so I got into that.
Yeah, and very successfully, I might add. I mean, you're the first guy to cross the magic 50 knots, first guy in the 50 knot club. Yeah. Some outright speed records. I think these stay forever, right? Like once you're in there, it doesn't matter if that record is from, a couple of years ago.
No, once you cross a certain thing like that, it stays forever. But again, it's records are there to be broken. It's really cool to see now it's pushing, for sure. I got the chance to live a day in 2012, which was amazing, where 2011 I've been down to Namibia, and the speed course that we set up down there with Seb Catalan, and I was the only windsurfer in that canal together with Seb, but he don't count because he's a kiter, so don't tell me that, but that's how it is. And went back and then kind of boosted Antoine and everybody to come down, because I said, Antoine, it's very simple. You have your record at 49.09 at the time. If you don't show up, your record will fall, so, and that's just guaranteed. I goes, oh shit, you really think so? Okay. So he shows up, Cedric Board shows up, Patrick Dieptem shows up, and we spend one day where, the record fell, I don't know how many times, but each one of us had it. That means that Cedric I think Cedric was the one who broke the record from Antoine. Patrick did it afterwards. Then I went over 50, so I got it twice. Then Antoine took it back. And then Cedric passed again. And then, it was one of those things. It was just rolling forward. And then eventually Antoine held it down again at 52.04 or something like that. So it was a very, very good day.
Yeah. Where do you think, with the current state of how the equipment is, where do you think the limit is?
Speed sailing?
Yeah.
I think, now we all said there's a cavitational limit of 47, 48, 90, 50 knots. There's a cavitational limit. Okay, now the boys are hitting top speeds at 55 knots. Still with the same fins, still with the same board, and pretty much the same sail, so there's but one thing is true, it's harder. Once you're getting into the, for myself, I think I peaked around 50. Funny enough, I didn't do 100 kilometers per hour. I did 99.6 or something like that. Very shy of in peak speed, that is. But the sensation for me over 50 knots, you feel better than below it. You're more set on the water. You can go more, but you don't accelerate that much anymore. So you would think ventilate somehow your surface of the board would help you. Supercavitational fins, that would probably help as well. But there's a lot of these sort of things that come down. You need more power and less drag. So how you do that, if you look at a kite, it has more power, it has less drag. So that goes faster. Hence, Alex's record is close to 60 knots right now. The cool thing with the windsurfing record is that it remains material you can go and pick off the shelf pretty much in the shop and roll out and go for a sail. And it's the same. We all have the same stuff, Sure, you can start to put America's Cup rigs on there with solid wings that, probably give you the more power that makes you go faster and less wind. And then you can break this windsurfing record in a lot less wind, so the water is flatter, more controlled. But then you need a crew on each side, a container to stock it, and it's not the same sport. It's not the same stuff. Then you get into all the way, like I said, more power, less drag. You have Vestas rocket, that's what they have, no drag, shitloads of power, and they go faster.
Yeah, because from the outside looking in, I've never done speed sailing properly. From the outside looking in, it feels like, windsurfing was the fastest thing, wind powered for 40 years or something. And
not that much. There were sailboats that had it before. There was a record from Pascal Macke who took it from Crossbow. I can't remember the year, but
Okay, yeah, 20 years.
It becomes long right now.
Yeah.
Sure.
And now this freaking sail rocket just smoked us out of the park, and it feels like it has to be doable, but it feels like almost there needs to be a gear revolution, right, to make it happen. And maybe it will become artificial, and maybe it will become less windsurfing. But do you think that maybe there has to be somebody like almost crazy to develop something like that? And I know you've been a part of the foiling boat, the Hydropter, right? You've been a part of that crew, and from a strictly theoretical physics standpoint, foiling should provide that, right? Should provide less drag and more power, but the control is a problem, at least for now.
That's right.
At these high
But
speeds.
that being said, when I was trying my first foil board, windsurfing would have been 4 years ago, something like that. 5 years ago now, 4 years ago. It was really hard, and we kept flinging off and doing 15, 16 knots, and you think you're going to die, right? Yeah. And now Juan Albodia set a mile record over 30 knots. So evolution goes very quick in that regard. So it's just that the current board, which is a planing hull with an asymmetrical fin around 19 cm with a, call it a 5.2 to 5.5 rig, that equipment will do 55 knots, but I don't think it will do 60, 65. It will probably not go all that far. But again, more power, less drag. You put somebody, massive muscles, huge guy, maybe, like Twain and all these guys, they show up now, they're massive. Maybe they are the one to push it into the next level. That's, who knows? But you would think that if you can get the falls under control, they can go really fast, there's no doubt. But it's mathematics, then you go down to, you get into the super cavitational falls. We played around with the idea to do a speedboat, in effect, with a solid wing, with a sea anchor to windward like the sail rockets, but on the T-foil. So you're foiling the whole time. You push the foil into super cavitational foil. At least the CFD studies shows that we could get quite easily into the 100 knot range, and they can slow down in control. All that takes is, now you have to build it, you have to campaign it, and you have to go. So it's time and money. But now I think there's a lot of, I know Antoine is on some sort of a speed project right now. I see Alex is with just employing the guys from Switzerland as well with the SP80. They are coming. There's something coming around the corner. I don't think the sail rockets can sleep that well for now. But like I said, I like the idea of rolling out the current windsurfing rig we have right now and go fight it out with the boys with kind of similar type equipment. And it's a fantastic feeling. Then, go down sailing in the trench in Namibia. It's awesome. It's such a great experience that I must recommend it very, very strongly. Even for you, you should get yourself organized and go down and do it, just once in your life, because it's really fun. But it's not about that you're going to set 100 knots windsurfing record or anything like that. It's just a really cool experience.
Yeah, I think for many of us, because we talk about it on tour sometimes, and I think for many of the young guys, it's like, shit, there's so much to do, and to go there just to get your national record or whatever is not really that much fun. I think you want to go fast. I think you want to, at least touch 50 and whatever. And to do that, you need the right gear. You need to prepare. Probably you need a couple sessions in La Franquie. You need, maybe the first year in Namibia is not going to be windy. I mean, like there was a few years where you guys didn't get record days, right?
Exactly. But close. There's not 1 year we didn't do 49. Since the first year, I did 47. After that, I did over 50 every year I went. So, even now, then we call it slow, because you do 50.23 or 40 or something like that. It's a slow day now, So, and what's funny is that they stack up like that. That's why I say now with somebody like yourself, with the development you guys have and the control of this, sure, you need a board, which today production boards are doing the speed, so it's not that complicated to find them, and to go for it, even though I know that it's a different feeling, but it's for sure, it just adds on. But for myself, like I said, I put it down to the same thing. We did 99, we did a transatlantic race, windsurfing race, and I was in the middle of my career. And I said, well, why the hell should I do that? It's not going to do anything. And I said, you know what? Because if I don't do it now, I probably won't get to do it again. And now, like many years later, I was very happy I did it, because it's a huge memory for me. We won the race, okay, fine. But for me, the strongest thing I have from it is midway across the Atlantic. I take off all my security gear and I dive down. I dove down to maybe 10, 15 meters, something like that. You have your sun goes down through lights like that. And there's 4,000 meters until you're at the bottom and you're in the middle of the Atlantic. And to me, that was a really cool sensation. And I think literally it goes down to the same thing. It's a sensation, it's a thing to do. And it's really cool for those who can.
I think many of us also, they feel like there's time, but like you say, who knows if the canal is going to be there, because if I have the choice of going down to Chile or to Maui to wave sail, it's kind of hard to go on that speed trip, knowing that probably in 10 years, my hips are not going to allow me to to go to Hokipa anymore, and whatever. Actually, speaking of Maui, I'm just going to throw it out there. Probably worst wipeout of all time in Jaws belongs to you, or at least filmed.
No, not even close. That was just JP that wanted to wipe out. He didn't wipe out enough, so he took one of mine. No, that's different. The worst wipeout I ever seen must have go down to the Pucella brothers. If it was Nicolo, if it was Francesco, I think they're just eating shit at Joe sometimes. Let's take it on the chin. For sure, for us, it was different. I started riding Jaws, who would have been 96, something like that. And it's really like a drug, because then you get to use your brain like we did in the early days of windsurfing to material develop, trying to figure out how to turn this better, how you can get this to go the right way. And that was filmed just a wipe out in the beginning of the bottom turn where it bounced out the fin and then got the thing on my head, and it's voila,
Yeah, if anybody hasn't seen it, it's in the About Time. I think it's actually on YouTube, that crash part from JP About Time movie, which is probably the best one still out there. Yeah, and there's just a little spin out, little reverse spin out in the bottom turn, let's call it.
There you go. That's the one. a messed up Spock. Okay, that's what it was.
Exactly, you
And
know.
so Brasino, these guys, and Kaileni, they do 360s on the way down nowadays. So it's the same. I just messed it up a bit.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, so we touched on the speed, and also you touched a little bit on, you kind of stayed in the sport. You did other sort of challenges and ventures with your own board brand, which afterwards turned into Mistral, and you were, involved with Gasoil, with the sales, and with PC2, with Challenger development, with a lot of stuff. But none of them sort of, probably AB Plus was the one that stuck for the longest, but none of them really seemed to, I don't know, like, were you not captivated enough? Was there something missing for you to like really push like crazy, and make it as full time as your windsurfing was?
I know it's different. Once you switch that corner, you get into the production part and the commercial part of product and so forth. You realize, you're coming a little bit from your ideas of the whole thing might be a little bit childish, because you come in there, you're super happy because you have a super strong lamination with the perfect rocker lines and the board jibes like hell, and it's the best thing ever. And you're trying to pitch this to a shop owner, and the guy goes, oh, that's cool. And what's my payment terms? And you go, payment terms? No, it's the best thing, Oh yeah, if you don't give me 3 months, then forget about it. This is not interesting. Why should I sell your board when I sell the other one? You go, cold shower. It's like, it's a different world. So when you look at the engagement of the big brands like Starboard, Fanatic, and the financials that you need to back this up and to push it forward, it's not easy. It's a very, very tough world. Now I know Finian is in the production stuff with Arnaud as well, with the boards, and that's really cool because especially Finian, because he has always been shaping his boards to one level more or less throughout his career, so now he's tasting all the way through, and it's not easy. You always you have delays on shipment, you have delays on deliveries, you have to collect your orders, you have to choose, do you build 5,000 boards and then hope to sell them, or do you build to order and then you're always on delay? Then it's a different story. So it's a very commercial thing, and I wasn't very good at it.
Too much headache for the payoff, sort of. Is that it?
Well, I wouldn't say that, because it's a passion. It's a labor of passion. If you just want to go out and make money, you probably wouldn't have a windsurfing brand. That's not the place where you say I put this many hours in and then I make my most money doing that way. That's not the case. The windsurfing brands are there because it's a labor of love in that regard. So you look at all the bosses of the companies around there, one time or the other, they've been a rider of some sort, that loves the sport, and that's what helps push it forward, I think.
Yeah. And you probably, if you just wanted to make quick money, you probably wouldn't also try to do hydrofoiling water taxis, would you?
Well, it's different, that now we're talking the startup world. Then you can make really quick money, but the monopoly money, that you get into a valuation, they go, wow, now you're a superstar. Okay, cool. But before you turn that to organic, that's a little bit different. But I started, we started together with Alain, a company called Sea Bubbles, which was an electrical foiling boat for using as a taxi boat, because every time you run around in Europe, you're stuck in traffic jam, cities that there's massive freeway through, nobody's on them. So I said, well, let's put some boats into there and transport people. And it was really cool. It's fun because you can see like east-west Paris. You can take somebody, it takes you 15 minutes. In a taxi today, they're going to take you an hour at best. So it's cool. And then there's no pollution. So there's no waves behind them. They have no noise and there's no pollution. So it's really cool. So you're trying to do something that's good.
Is it true that you got busted by the police on your first test run in Paris?
No, not busted, but they come to check. They came to do their job. That's different. Because of course you put a boat that lifts out of the water like that, the police going to be very interested and say, what is that? Do you follow rules and regulations, speed and so forth? So yeah, they did come by, but that was their job. But the truth is it happened to me in Paris, it happened to me in Geneva, and in Saint-Tropez. So there you go. So we got busted everywhere to have the police come in and check that everything was legal and good to go.
back to windsurfing. You said, like, now by now I don't trust you that you don't follow much, because you know exactly what's going on. But when you look at windsurfing today, what do you see?
I see, I see that everybody is in it, kind of look like a He-Man. You guys are a lot fitter than what we used to be in the day. So that by deduction means that you have more power into the gear. The disciplines melt together. I missed the course racing part. I think that was cool of windsurfing because it's more tactical game. That's my background. But apart from that, the slalom is awesome. The wave riding is just out of control. If you see what I just saw, Philip Kirchner just land something out of this world in Pozo. That was something that you would thick and flick a little, paper cut, paper mache windsurfing boards and blow on them, see how the sail would flick. That's what they're doing now. So in between what Ricardo is doing, Brausinho is taking it out of this world. What Kailani is doing is awesome as a waterman like that, So it's everything's pushing forward. It's beautiful to see.
Do you think it's a little bit too specialized? Was it always gonna go that way? I mean, you guys did everything. You did probably in 1 year daggerboard, course racing, slalom, waves, and this kind of old school freestyle or whatever, and then there was an overall champion. There was a windsurfing, professional windsurfing champion, Did you always see it going super specialized?
Well, it's very complicated how to see it, because the sport will get more complicated. It's just because the better you get at it, the more you push it, and you push it into complicated, right? It's just in human nature. Why do you do one front loop when you can do two? And if you can do a flip in the middle of it, why wouldn't you? So that goes that way, right? And then it's just only that many people that can do it. So then the person that can do a double backflip into a front flip into a tabletop and still landing on his little pinky toes like that on the board, he scores more. So then he wins. Then he will go to the judges and say, you don't score me enough for that. I need a bigger, you need to give more points for this. And then everybody goes, yeah, well, he's right, because did you see he actually scraped his ear on the same time doing all that, right? So that scores even more. Okay, so it pushes. This is evolution. The judges has to go through that, and it pushes the rules and regulations. Now, if you want your one windsurfer champion, well, you start pooling money from all these events, and you do an overall, and then you say, well, the overall title for the best windsurfer in the world, he gets 60,000 for the year, and that will be counted on the wave riding and the slalom, and that. Then you change the sport again. It's about rules and regulations, So I think today it is a quite good separation, because your slalomers becomes very specific slalomers, not necessarily slalomers going to win the freestyle competition, right? And the wave riders are wave riders, and it splits up, and everybody has the competitions for that. Hopefully now after the COVID, the competitions will come back, because this year doesn't look very promising. But that's just tough luck, But I think it's that's the it is what it is. Then it's a choice of the committee how they want to how they want to bring the sport forward.
But do you get this sense, like, I don't know, you look at, yeah, this guy is great in slalom, but he didn't, you were, I don't know, great in waves as well, riding jaws, whatever. Do you feel that sense of pride of being, like a very complete windsurfer? Do you look at that at all? Does your generation look at that?
No, I don't think so. I don't look at it like that. I'm blown away what the guys are doing, the different disciplines. But again, it's access to material, it's access to money to be able to do all that we did back in those days, right? But it was driven because we have the individual championship plus the overall. Once you have the overall, and the overall was the one that scored the heaviest, then you have to do the different disciplines and you have to figure them out, So today, I would think that it would be tougher for somebody to do what we did back in those days today, because you would kind of feel that you're losing our training hours on a specific sport, discipline that wouldn't do it. So it's very tricky to say, should you go back to the old system or should you run it like this? It's, it comes down to the market also, what they demand, so tricky to say.
Okay, so longboarding, course racing, slalom, freestyle, waves, speed. Which one of those, you lay in bed at night, and if you think about windsurfing, which one of those you're like, fondly kind of reminiscing about?
Well, like I said, I'm from racing background, so I like the course racing part of it. But course racing part of it, I must add in shitty conditions, because going out course racing in massive open ocean where wind is perfect all the time, then slalom was much more fun. So what I liked was the in and out slalom through the waves. That was kind of cool, because there's one of the big events we had was in La Torche, and we're all in the finals, and we'll finish on the beach and say, "Where did you finish?" I wouldn't have a clue. I finished behind that guy, or I'm not sure if he actually went over the finish line. Maybe I was a lap ahead. You wouldn't have a clue, because we got smoked 2-3 times on the way out, swimming for the gear, going again. It was a mayhem, So it was very different than what we have to.
Beach starts as well.
Sure. Beach starts, running starts, and stuff like that. So this is different, Like I said, they say, it would be good. It would be really cool to see a similar type of slalom now, where you had to beach start, watch out for your fins. They cost a bit more money. But, it's beach starts and I have to jump on the way out. That's cool.
I'm on it, trying to pitch it, but
Go for it.
there's some pushback,
Shoot, man.
Yeah. Do you miss it sometimes?
Yeah, I do. Sure I do. But I'm also very reminiscent. I'm happy to see what I've done through my career of windsurfing. I'm very proud and very fulfilled by it. So I don't have any regrets. Even with the results, I think I did great. Even though, sure, winning is always better, but I wasn't out of that mentality. So it's, I got what I deserved like that. So I'm quite happy with that. And then now I switched, and now I'm a family man. I have my 3 kids. I'm skiing. They're full on skiing. They're not even windsurfing. They're skiers, So I have my oldest kid, Axel. He's 11 now. He's going to the ski university here in France, and followed by the committee. So they're full on, Chris and Morgan behind twins. They're full speed. And then for windsurfing, Axel is just getting into his harness and his foot strap. So it's coming. But they're young, so they have their time to get into the windsurfing world later on.
Yeah, definitely some more fun moments coming up with that.
Exactly.
I can't believe though you would switch, nice warm Hawaiian weather for a mountain, but it's up to you.
Well, it's great. Hawaii is fantastic, but it is Groundhog Day. The film Groundhog Day?
Yes.
They go with Bill Murray, whatever. That's Hawaii. It's times in Maui when you're living the windsurfing world, you won't know if it's Monday, Sunday, or Tuesday, or if it's February or March or April. You don't really know what month it is, and you live your life from the buoy reading to see how big the waves are coming, and then shit, it's probably summer because the swells are hitting the south shores, and now it's definitely winter because the waves are on the north side. So it's a very different lifestyle than here in Europe, where you're much more, it's business, it's different, it's more hardcore like that. So it's sometimes I can't say one life is better than the other. I've been very lucky to live very different life. I had my life in Sweden when I was a kid, and I had my pro life when I was living mostly out of Hawaii and Australia. Awesome, and then now it's different parts. And like a book, you read it one way. If you always have to go back on the same page, you kind of get bored as well, right? So it's it's challenging.
Yeah, and let's hope we took maybe 5 to 10 pages out of that book today.
There you go.
You should write one. You definitely should.
One day.
Maybe there'll be stuff that I haven't asked you, but you would like.
There's lots. There is lots. Don't you worry. But like I said, I think it's we all grew up windsurfing. That was the funniest part. I think that today maybe you have people coming into windsurfing because there's a sport. You come at a different level of life. We were kids when we got into it. We're all kids. Even Robby was a kid. World champion at 13 years old. So if you look at Bjorn, he came in same. He was 16, 15. I don't remember. We're all kids, and then we all grew up through it. So it's a little bit different than coming as already an athlete, saying that now I focus on this and I'm going to deliver my target. You know, we weren't on that page at that stage. You know, we're just growing up through it. So I mean, fancy that, and that's what I say. You know, fancy that little kid from Stockholm, Sweden. How random is that? You
Not bad, huh?
What I've done is awesome. You know, so I'm super happy about that. It's cool.
Not bad at all.
Mm.
Listen, we have this segment with like questions we ask everybody just to wrap it up. Some random stuff. So let's go with that. What are your pet peeves?
Pet peeves. Oh, God damn. That's a hard one. I don't know. I ate too much chocolate. There you go.
Okay. How many times a day do you pee your wetsuit?
You know what? That one is a tough one because usually say you shouldn't do that and that you don't do that. But when you don't pee in your wetsuit, you lie like a rug, right? That's just everybody
Exactly.
does. And it just depends on where you are, because if you're in silt, where under the hail storm and stuff, well, you probably pee in your wetsuit about 40 times, right? And if you're in the south of France in the summertime, then maybe just once or twice a day. You know, it just depends, right?
Yeah. Who's your top 5 windsurfers of all time?
Well, I'm going to be boring and say obviously Robby, because Robby is Robby. You can't change anything of that. Then Bjorn is Bjorn. You can't do anything about that either. Then I will throw in a kid that I sponsored when he came to Maui as a little young Brazilian kid. And Braucinho to me is very impressive. Just his attitude towards the whole thing, I think is awesome. There's Robert, there's Keith Tabul, there is, good luck, as you know, I have so many, it's very tricky to say. But I think each one of them have all brought certain things to the table, you know, and that's what's really cool. You know, look at Jason Pollack, how he totally turned the wakeboard design around. He showed up, God knows, was it 91 or something like that in Hukipa. And there was a final with Robby where Robby was lucky to get 3 points if Jason got 10 per wave, you know, just changed the way how you ride a wave. You know, there are guys like that. So I think, how many did I get?
Plenty already. Definitely over 5. But
I'm done. I'm good.
maybe this will be easier. Most underrated windsurfer of all time.
Finian Maynard. There you go. The dog.
He'll love to hear that for sure.
There you go.
One spot you'd have to sail for the rest of your life, and you have to do it. Like, you have to go every day,
Hukipa.
even with the crowd.
Well, you know, if you sail a place every day, the guys by then they'd be scared enough of you, so you get your wave yourself. So that's all right.
Yeah, you're a big boy, I guess. Worst check-in story or check-in bill?
This one, okay. The worst check-in story, I have a few, but this one was the one. I think I was in Perth, Australia, and I had to run up to the World Cup in Japan. And Qantas Airways, I said, shit, you know, I'm usually travel Star Alliance, so I have no kudos with those guys. And I said, well, I really got to go there. I contacted them before and said, I have all this windsurfing gear. How can we handle this? And they say, okay, wow, that's 450 kilos of gear. That's obviously a lot of material. But you know what? And I said, I can't send it cargo because cargo got stuck in the customs. So we're stuck in Japan forever and it won't work. I have to get it on my plane. I go, okay, cool. No worries. Why don't you just come the day before? We check it in. You pay your excess bill. And the next day, you just go on and it would kick it in to the same plane. So it comes out with you in Japan. I said, well, that works for me. Okay, great. 3,000 euros, $3,000. I said, okay, fine, great, cool. Paid the money, got the stuff over. Boom, next day, I get to the check-in. So I get to the check-in and they check in and they go, do you have any luggage? I said, well, yeah, like I said, I've just paid $3,000 for a bunch of windsurfing gear that I did yesterday. And the woman goes, why did you do that? You should have just come here. I'll check it into you for free. So that was kind of fun. But, we all have our check-in days. There's all our competition in Aruba. That was fun. When the whole World Cup comes in and leaves with the same plane, that, there was a check-in for the PW or PBA flight. We had Aruba to Dominican Republic private jet for everybody. So we rented one of these planes and we all jumped in on the same plane. That was, we have some travel stories. Don't worry.
Yeah, the private jet thing wouldn't happen today. But getting out of Japan or Korea,
I mean, if you the private jet was the cheapest one. That means we rented one of the regular flights, and just put all the guys with all the equipment. It was just cheaper and faster. So it was not glamorous private jet like that. But obviously, jumping in to the plane, you have first class and second class, and you look at your boarding pass and it says 23F, and there's air hostess and everything, and I sit down in 2A, and they look at me, what are you doing? I said, well, our plane, first come, first serve, right?
Yeah.
There was a fight first class seat, like I can't believe after that. Was really funny. But yeah, there's
why wouldn't you? But I thought you guys traveled like at least business, right? All the time.
We always paid economy class, and then you try to do some sub story to get upgraded, and then sometimes you use your miles, of course, So end of the day, depends on who you fly with. You use your miles, or you use your standing to get into business class. Yeah.
Yeah. Still to this day, getting out of like some contests, it's insane. Like, you fly out of, I fly out of Warsaw alone. I get charged $1,000 or whatever. And then we show up in Korea to Seoul or whatever airport. And there's probably about like 300 bags or something. And they just check it in on one plane and everybody pays $50 each or whatever. And it's
there
cool, so it's funny how it works sometimes.
I can imagine.
Well, this one should probably be quite obvious, but maybe it's not. Let's see. Who's your worst competitor?
Worst competitor. It depends on how you spice that question, And I think, of course, competition-wise, it would be Bjorn, But then we've seen so many different things throughout the years that it's tricky to pinpoint to somebody that that is not on it.
Yeah, the guy, like the guy that you see, like you walk to the notice board and you see him in your head, fuck, not again. You have that one?
No, I don't. I don't have that guy. I was lucky.
So nice, man. Okay, and last but not least, who would you like to hear on this little show of ours?
Brasilio.
He's there.
Because
put it on. Put it on. You drive down the coast or whatever. Switch on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube.
He's
whatever.
on there. So you talk about the old guys. You want to see an old guy on there?
Whoever.
I would like to hear Norio Asano, Japanese rider.
There you go.
Very fun person, still doing it right now, and has lived through the whole Japanese pro tour scene. Awesome guy. That'd be a good guy to see.
Yeah. Okay, Anders, thank you so much, man. Thanks for your time.
No worries.
Great to hear all these stories and all that, old school chat. Such a different world, for me. I mean, it's like, as I say, I didn't even have any numbers of your generation. I needed to ask for you, these were young guys, So,
yeah.
So great for taking us a little
goes
trip
on,
down memory lane,
There you go. Thanks, Maciek. And again, congrats on your latest win. Now you have to do what Bjorn always said. Bjorn said, if you want to be good, you got to do it twice. Off you go.
There you go. On it. Thanks.
Be good,
man.
you guys.
Appreciate it. Bye-bye.
No. Bye-bye.
Take care. Bye.
And there we go. What an interesting chat there with Anders. I've really liked it because Maciek, it's obviously well before Maciek's time. So a lot of that is just listening, soaking it all in. Love it. Love it. If you want to support the channel, because these things take time, they take money and quite a lot of effort. If you like what we're doing, you can support by just chipping in as little as 20 quid. And if you think it's worth more than that, you can chip in a bit more. It's for 12 months. So from this time now to all the way next year, and you'll have chances to win prizes, hats, and all this other stuff, and obviously support what we're doing. If you also don't want to miss a video, subscribe. I'll put both of those links down there, and I'll click up there for recent or previous podcasts, and maybe even the playlist. There we go. Thanks for watching.